I'm really pleased to introduce him. He can explain more on his background, but please give it up for Geoff McDonald. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you, Dan and Jenny. I just want to say, this is awesome, what you guys have done today. And then over the last 24 hours, I was saying to Jenny about 3 years ago, I had this vision that we should have a mental health festival, but where we should have it is as you're coming up the escalators to Canary Wharf, in that big open area, we have a big stage, a festival, so that we can touch the hundreds and thousands of people who are going to work in the city suffering in silence. There's a bit of... It's what? Oh, it was a train. Gee, okay. All right. But yeah, I mean, first time ever that you've done this, and I just think it's awesome, and I just hope that we do something bigger, better, and greater next year. But I'm not here to promote Getahead. What I'm here to do is I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why am I so passionate about creating a different world, and I'll tell you what that different world is. And then I'm going to share with you what are some of the things that I'm doing to maintain my recovery, as I refer to myself as an anxiety-fueled depressive. And what do I do to maintain my recovery as an anxiety-fueled depressive? And then the third thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave you with a few thoughts on what could you as an individual do to catalyze change in the workplace. So those are the three things that I want to try and cover. Let me start by telling you just a little bit about me. So my name's Geoff McDonald. I am not an Australian, I'm not a New Zealander, and I'm not a Canadian, and I'm not an American. I'm from the Southern Hemisphere in a place called South Africa. I started my career as a teacher many, many years ago, and after about 3 years of teaching in South Africa, I joined a company called Unilever, a fast-moving consumer goods business, and I spent 26 years working for Unilever, culminating in a role which was the global head of HR for all of our marketing, communications, and sustainability around the world. At the end of 2014, I decided to leave Unilever to go and live a life of purpose. To go and live a life on purpose. And let me tell you what that purpose is. It's very, very simple. I have a very, very simple purpose. And the purpose that I have, I think it was Mark Twain. He asked us the question, what are the 2 most important days in your life? What are they? So the 2 most important days in your life, according to the Brits and everybody that I talk to in the UK, the 2 most important days in your life is the day you were born and the day you die. Now, why the day you die is such an important day in your life, I don't know. Maybe it's important for your enemies. The day you die is a really important day. But for some reason, those people who live in the UK, their view of the world is they can't wait for the second most important day of their life, which is when they're going to die. But Mark Twain said the 2 most important days in our life is the day we were born and the day we find out why. Why? And I'm very clear on why I think I was born. And it's for a very simple reason. All I want to do is I want to try and create workplaces. And when I talk about a workplace, I'm talking about a school. I'm talking about a fire department. I'm talking about a hospital. I'm talking about a university. I'm talking about a financial services firm. I'm talking about a kindergarten. I just want us to create, and I want to help create workplaces where everybody in every workplace all over the world feels that they genuinely have the choice to put their hand up and to ask for help if they are suffering from depression, anxiety, or are bipolar. It's as simple as that. I want us to have workplaces everywhere in the world where people feel they genuinely have that choice. And it's not a noble purpose, and I'll tell you why it's not a noble purpose. It's not noble because in every single workplace, everywhere in the world, everybody feels they have that choice if they're suffering from a physical illness. There is no workplace anywhere in the world where somebody who is suffering from a physical illness doesn't think they can put their hand up and ask for help. Yet, in the 21st century, when we talk about artificial intelligence, when we talk about driverless motor cars, where we've put men and women on the moon, people still don't think that they genuinely have the choice to put their hand up and ask for help if they are suffering from depression, anxiety, or bipolar. In the 21st century. I want to do an exercise. Stand up, everyone. Please. Thank you. And what I want you to do is I want you to either assume this or it's very, very real for you. That in the last year, you have suffered from anxiety, depression, or bipolar, or you've been diagnosed as bipolar. So you either assume it or it's very real for you. And I'm going to give you 3 scenarios. The first scenario is the following. You are at a family tea party, summer tea party with the family, and you happen to be at a table sitting next to your most favorite aunt and uncle, your most favorite. For those of you in the room that would not tell their most favorite aunt and uncle that they are suffering from depression, anxiety, or have just been diagnosed with bipolar, would not tell, sit down. You work for a company that you love. You've been there 10, 12 years. You see your career there. And the most amazing job has just come up. You're in line for that job. You're competing. And you're having your interview. And in the interview, you get asked whether you have suffered or have had any physical or mental ill health challenges. For those of you that would not declare that you had suffered from depression, anxiety, or are bipolar, sit down. You're in love. You're in love. You know that puppy love? You know it? You're in love. And it's your first date. And you've worked so hard to get this first date. And you're sitting across the way from him or her. If you would not declare that you suffer from depression, anxiety, or bipolar, sit down. This is not the world I want. This is not the world I want. I want everybody standing up. I want everybody standing up. Thank you. Thank you. It's not the world I want. And guess what? We're all mental. And I know when I say that, people, what? Well, there's nobody in this room that would say that they are not physical. But when I say we're all mental and we're all physical, ooh, I'm not mental. I'm not mental. And you creatives in this room, I've got a job for you. Brand mental health is so damaged. It is so damaged. And I'm going to come on to that. How do we improve brand mental health? How do we make it aspirational? Who's the Usain Bolt of mental health? Who's the Usain Bolt of mental health? And why am I so passionate about living this life on purpose? It's simple. I've got a story. And the story started on the 25th of January, 2008. I'll never, ever forget the date, because the 26th of January was to be my daughter's 13th birthday. So you can imagine how much excitement there was in our household on the evening of the 25th of January, 2008. And why was there lots of excitement? Why was Jennifer so excited that evening? Why? Why do you think she was so excited? It's just your birthday. Beg your pardon? Right, Jennifer, at midnight on the 25th of January, she was going to go through a rite of passage. And that rite of passage was that she was going to go from a child to becoming a teenager. And I remember her saying to me that evening, Dad, tomorrow, you can't treat me like a little girl anymore. I'm going to be a teenager. And at midnight on the 25th of Jan, 2008, I was awoken with the most massive of panic attacks. I can even feel some of the anxiety as I talk now. My understanding of the word panic attack, up until that moment, I had no understanding. In fact, I don't think I'd even had a conversation with anybody. I don't think I'd even used the words panic attack. And so what do you think I thought I was having? I thought I was about to have a heart attack. And you know, at that stage, I'd been married for 20 years to my wife, Debbie. I had been doing this global job in Unilever, traveling the world. And when I was at home, off an aeroplane, I was training for some triathlon or swimathon. And so I was very absent. And I remember turning to my wife that night at midnight and bumping Debbie and saying, Deb, I think I'm about to have a heart attack. And I remember her turning and saying, have it. And I'm joking. She didn't say. I mean, I think she wanted to say, just have it. And then I'm going to find a husband that cares and loves me and all the rest. But no, she didn't. She didn't. But she said, why, Geoff? And I kind of explained, and I said, I've got some of these aches. And she said, have you got any aches in your chest and aches in your arms? And I said, no, I haven't got any of that, because those are the kind of the symptoms of a heart attack. And she said, well, why don't you get up and just walk around the room and take some deep breaths? And so I got up and I walked around the room. And I took some deep breaths, and slowly the levels of anxiety began to subside. And I got myself back into bed. And at about 3 o'clock the next morning, because I could now not go back to sleep, and I got up and I went into the bathroom. And I remember I had a sore on the inside of my mouth. And I looked in the mirror and I interrogated the sore. I interrogated it, and I got back into bed, and I began to do what I continued to do for a long, long time, which was to catastrophize and catastrophize. And I lay there, and I kind of thought to myself, I have now got the beginnings of throat and mouth cancer. And I lay there, and I thought to myself, you know what? I'm not going to do what any proud father would do one day, and that is to walk my 2 beautiful daughters down the aisle. And I lay there and I catastrophized and I catastrophized. And at about 7:30 the next morning, Jennifer comes running into our bedroom. Excited. We have a tradition in our home where on birthdays, you put presents at the end of our bed and we open the presents together. And all I can say to my wife is, please get you, Jennifer, and her sister Anna out of here. Please. This laughter, this energy, this excitement, take it away, please. And all I want to do is I just taking my duvet and I'm pulling it over my head, and I just cannot face getting out of bed. And you know, during my illness, I really learned, one of the things that I learned, maybe you can take it away for you today, is I learned the power of doing the opposite. So when I didn't feel like making a cup of tea, go and make a cup of tea. When I didn't feel like getting up, get up. When I didn't feel like walking around the garden, walk around the garden. Debbie takes the kids to school. She gets back home at about 10:30 that morning. Where am I? Where am I? Still in bed. And this is somebody who's usually up at about 5:30, 6, going for a run or going for a swim or jumping on a bicycle, and here I am still in bed. And then a conversation begins. And the conversation that begins is, Geoff, why don't you go and see a doctor? What? Go and see a doctor? Why must I go and see a doctor? I've got no aches. I've got no pains. I've got no temperature. I'm not feeling nauseous. Why must I go to a doctor? Please, just go and see a doctor. Are there any people who live around Southfields or Wimbledon? Yeah? You know those arrogant South Africans that you get on the train? They're kind of alpha male types that you just want them to shut up? I know you're so polite, you English. You're so polite. Just say, yes, we know them. We know them. Anyway, by about 1 o'clock that day, Debbie has convinced me to go to the doctor, and I'm in the doctor's rooms, and I get asked a number of questions. I get asked questions around my appetite, and I'm told, and I respond by saying I've got no appetite. I get asked questions around my levels of irritability, and I say I am so irritable. Can't believe how irritable I am. I'm asked questions around my ability to engage socially with people, and I say that I can't engage socially with people. I'm not interested in engaging socially with people. I'm asked questions about what can I read and what can't I read, and I can't read any newspapers, because if there's a bad story, if there's a story where a child has died and a parent has to bury that child, which we're not supposed to do, I can't read it. It just triggers me. My mood is low. My sleep is bad. I'm waking up at 3 in the morning and catastrophizing and worrying about stuff. And he then asks me a really, really personal question. And the question is, have you had any suicidal thoughts? And I think to myself, if we think the stigma around depression and anxiety is high, well, I tell you, the stigma around suicide is even higher. And I kind of think, how do I respond to that? And I think, well, I'm going to be honest about this, and I'm going to say, yes, I have. And then he says to me, have you planned it? And I said, I haven't planned it, but I know exactly what I will do. I know exactly what I will do. And he turns to me and he says, Geoff, you are ill. And I say to him, I'm ill? I'm ill with what? I mean, you have not even taken your stethoscope and listened to my chest. You've not taken my temperature. You've not looked into my eyes. You haven't looked into my ears or down my throat. What do you mean I'm ill? I'm ill with what? And he turned to me and he said, Geoff, you are suffering from anxiety-fueled depression. Now, I can tell you, up until the 26th of January 2008, you know what my understanding of the word depression was? And I hear it so much today, and that's why we've got to change the narrative and the language. But you know what my understanding of the word depression was? Are there any Arsenal supporters in this room? That's okay. I know there's a stigma, but yes, I'm an Arsenal supporter. All right? And you know what it's like. Eh? We get to halfway through the season, and we kind of think we've got a chance. And then we get 2/3 into the season, and I turn to my wife and say, Deb, I am so depressed about this Arsenal football team. Or I'll wake up on a Saturday morning and I want to get on my bike and go for a ride in the mountains. And I turn to my wife, it's pouring with rain. And I say, Deb, I'm depressed because it's raining. And then she turns to me and says, Geoff, there's no such thing as bad weather in the UK. And I say, what do you mean? She says, it's just bad clothing. I remember when I first got to this country, probably after about 2 years, people used to talk to me about a thing called SAD. SAD. And I used to say, what is SAD? And they would say, it's seasonal effects disorder. And I would look at them and say, what a load of crap. What? The weather influencing your mood? What crap. As Piers Morgan would say, just man up. Just man up. That was my understanding of the words depression, anxiety, seasonal effects disorder. And guess what? Here I am at 1 o'clock on the 26th of January 2008, diagnosed with anxiety-fueled depression. I leave the doctor's rooms that day and I make a decision that saves my life. And if I had not made this decision, I would not be doing what I'm doing today, living this life on purpose. What do you think the decision was that saved my life? What do you think it was? Well, in some ways, I'd already gone to get help. My wife had convinced me to go to the doctor, and I can tell you, when the doctor said, "Do you want some medication?" I mean, they hadn't even finished the word medication, and I'm saying absolutely, because here I am so naive, thinking it's a bit like an antibiotic. I'm going to get this antibiotic, in 48 hours, I'm going to start feeling better. So give it, throw it to me. 7 weeks, 8 weeks, 9 weeks, it's still not working. I'm still living in a black hole. What was it that kept me alive during those dark, dark moments while I was learning how to recover through medication, cognitive behavioral therapy, slowly getting back onto my bicycle, meeting with a guy every sort of 3 weeks who'd been so ill 2 years prior. He was now better, and I looked at him and I kind of thought, guess what? I can get better. He gives me hope that I can get better. But what was it that kept me alive? Talking? Connection? Let's go deeper than that. I made a decision that I would walk out of the doctor's rooms and I would tell people what was wrong with me. I would not tell people that I had glandular fever. I would not tell people that I had some stress-related illness. I would not tell people that I had bilharzia from all the time I spend in South Africa. I would tell people that I am suffering from anxiety-fueled depression. What did I get in response? That kept me alive. No, more than support. What did I realize from everybody that I told? My employer, my daughters, my wife, my friends. What was I showered with that kept me alive? Beg your pardon? Thank you. Thank you. Do you know the only thing that kept me alive in my darkest, darkest moments was knowing how much I was loved by so many people? It's the only thing. How many of you watched Harry marry Meghan? It's okay. You can put your hand up. It's all right. You can be a royalist. It's okay. How many of you listened to the Archbishop? How many of you listened to what he had to say about the power of love? You know, when I listened to that sermon as I was driving my car, I got goosebumps. Because it was the only thing that kept me alive. I don't know what would have befallen me had it not been for my ability to talk about my illness and for me to experience the love that I experienced that kept me alive. And for those of you that are in this room that are either caring, supporting, helping somebody who might be ill, and all it needs is to just show them how much you love them. That's all it needs. I take 3 months to get better. I have to take 3 months off work. This is back in 2008. I cannot go near work. And over a period of 3 months, through various things that work for me and don't necessarily work for everybody, I get myself better. I go back to work. This is 2008. 2010, I have a relapse. Nothing as bad as 2008, but I have a relapse. And then in 2012, I'm leaving Unilever, 100 Victoria Embankment, and I'm walking across Blackfriars Bridge to Waterloo Station. And I'm going to Waterloo Station because I'm about to catch a southwest train down to a little village that I live in called Horsley. I remember when I first came to this country, I used to say to people, I live near Guildford. And they used to say to me, oh, you live in the southeast? And I would say, yeah, I live in the southeast. And then blow me down, I'd get to Waterloo and I'd catch a southwest train. And I kind of thought, what is this all about? And somebody then said to me, no. You live in the southeast of England, but you live southwest of London. Ah, okay. Now I know why I catch southwest trains. And so I'm walking over the bridge, and my telephone goes. And on the end of the phone is my wife, and she says to me, Geoff, I've got terrible news. And I said, Deb, what is the news? And are the girls okay? And she says, yes, the girls are okay, but your friend is dead. And I said, what? We were with him 2 weeks ago. What do you mean he's dead? And I don't know if you remember, but in October of 2012, there was a spate of 6 bankers who jumped off buildings in the city. He was one of them. And you know, here was an individual. Here was an individual. The brighter the light, the darker the shadow. Think about it. Ruby Wax, Stephen Fry, Robin Williams, Vici. How much light did he bring to people's lives? And the darker the shadow. And my friend was the most energetic, fun-loving human being. And he left a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And as I got onto the train and I got home that evening and I lay in bed, I came to the most simple conclusion. And the conclusion that I came to that evening was that stigma had just killed my friend. Because I know that if he had been suffering from any physical illness, he would have put his hand up, he would have asked for help, and he would have got better. But because he was suffering from a mental illness, and we know that today, he couldn't even ask me, who had the badge, who had the t-shirt. And I lay in bed that night and I thought to myself, this is just not fair. It's not fair. And I know life's not fair, and I know the world that we live in is not fair. And I thought, I have to do something about that. But here I am back in 2012, October of 2012. I've been living in this country for a good number of years. I came here in 98, and then I spent some time in Australia, and then I came back. And I lay there and I thought, how can I make an impact? And I thought, you know what? It's very difficult because I have no network in this country that is influential. The only network that I have that in this country is a bunch of bloody South Africans who live down in Surrey. Because birds of a feather love to flock together. And then I'm doing this global job in Unilever, and the only network that I really have is inside Unilever, but they're in the Philippines, and in India, and in China, and Brazil. So how am I going to impact the UK? And I lie there, and I think to myself, you know that there's one person out there. There's one person out there who's hugely influential, who back in 2012, and he continues to do it today, is advocating, campaigning, and talking and trying to normalize mental ill health. And I think to myself, wow, imagine if I could just meet him. Just meet him. And tell him what I want to try and do. I'm sure he'll open some doors for me. And so I go to my iPad that no longer lies next to my bed, but back in 2012 it did. And I open up my iPad and I Google him. And as I'm Googling him, I'm saying a little prayer, which is, Rob, I just hope on your website you've got an email address. And as I get onto the email address, onto the website, there's an email address in the right-hand corner. And so I write him an email. And back in those days, my email address was jeff.mcdonald@btinternet.com. It's not that today. It's different. And I write an email to a guy called Alistair Campbell. Do you know Alistair Campbell? For those of you who don't, he was Tony Blair's right-hand man, communications director during his time in Downing Street. And I write to Alistair Campbell from jeff.mcdonald@btinternet.com. I tell him what happened to myself in 2008, in 2010, and what's just happened to my friend that afternoon. And I want to make the world a fairer place. Within 10 minutes, he's responded. A week later, we meet up in Belsize Park, and ever since that day, he begins to open all sorts of doors for me to begin to advocate, to campaign, to break the stigma around mental ill health in workplaces. And you know, somebody once said to me that when you live a life on purpose, and some of you will get this and some of you won't, because when somebody said it to me a couple of years ago, I didn't get it. But what they said to me is that when you live a life on purpose, the universe, it starts to conspire to put people, places, and opportunities in front of you that you could never have planned for yourself. And I used to think, oh, well, there's some spiritual thing that's going on here. I mean, I can't get that. Well, I was with Alistair Campbell a couple of weeks ago, and I said to him, Alistair, you know when I wrote to you in 2008? I said, why did you respond to my email? Geoff.mcdonald@btinternet.com. You know, this wasn't Tony.Blair to Alistair Campbell. And typical Alistair Campbell, he turned to me and he said, Geoff, don't think you're important. Okay, all right. Okay, I won't think, I know I'm not important. I mean, I'm not, I'm bowing to you, Alistair. I don't think I'm important. But he said, you know what happened that day? The day you sent me that email, he said, at lunchtime that day, I was in a meeting with Sue Baker. Sue Baker is the CEO of Time to Change. Time to Change is the big mental health campaign in this country. And he said, I was having lunch with Sue Baker, and she said to me, Alistair, don't you know some senior business leader who is passionate about addressing the stigma of mental ill health in workplaces? And Alistair turned to Sue and he said, no, I don't know anybody in business. I mean, I'm a politician. At 8 o'clock that night, he gets my email. Within 10 minutes, he's responded, and my life changes. I spend a year advocating and campaigning through to the middle of 2013, and then it dawns on me. Guess what? It dawns on me. Where do you think I could have the biggest impact in breaking the stigma of mental ill health? No, not at school. Where could I, Geoff McDonald, I'm doing all this stuff, writing for the FT, doing programs, for the BBC, blah, 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 and kind of thinking, am I having an impact? And then one day I think to myself, there is a place that I can have the biggest impact. Where would it be? In Unilever. And why me in Unilever? Why me? So one, because I'm in human, which by the way, I'm not sure we should call it human, but I'm in human resources, okay? I'm not only in human resources, I'm a really senior professional in human resources in a global organization. So that's one. What's the second reason that that's the place I should have an impact? Beg your pardon? I know a lot of people, and a lot of people know me, and because I've been with the business at that stage about 24 years, I've got quite a lot of credibility. So I'm fairly senior, and I've got some credibility. But what's the most powerful thing I had that nobody else had? Yes. Yes. I had lived experience. So what I say is not from some book or some theory off a bookshelf. I had lived experience. Lived experience. And so we go on a journey in Unilever around breaking the stigma, and we spend about a year doing some work together with the head of HR here in the UK. We pilot a number of initiatives. We begin to see an 8-fold increase in the number of people starting to put their hands up, asking for help. And I think to myself, I've learned something, and I'm going to go out into the world, and I'm going to live a life on purpose. So that's why I'm so passionate about trying to create workplaces all over the world where people feel they genuinely have the choice to put their hand up and ask for help if they're suffering from depression, anxiety, or bipolar. What have I learned from that experience? What I've learned from that experience are a couple of things. The first thing that I've learned is to accept who I am. I'm an anxiety-fueled depressive. That's been the most important learning for me, is to accept who I am. And yes, I have my days, and yes, I have my weeks. But as I recover, I've learned a couple of things that I want to share with you as individuals. Some of you might be living with people who are suffering from depression and anxiety. Some of you might be suffering yourself in silence. Some of you might be caring for somebody. Some of you are very well, and I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And what I'm learning is that there is something that keeps me going. And the thing that keeps me going is my energy. But I can only have energy if I look after my well-being. And you know, when I look at organizations today, I'm doing a lot of provoking and challenging what I see in organizations today, because they are organizations that are going after this well-being thing. Well, guess what? It's not sticking. It is not sticking. And the way in which they look after and they do the well-being is, oh, well, we'll have a few bananas next to the till in the canteen. We've sorted out the well-being of our people. Or guess what? You know what? We used to have chips and sweets in meetings. We're now going to have nuts. Or I'm going to give you a bit of gym membership, and then we've sorted out the well-being. Oh, guess what? You know what? We've really got this well-being thing taped because we have a week. It's called the Wellness Week. And we show you all this love and care during the Wellness Week, and then the other 51 weeks of the year, we just flog you to death. And it's not sticking. It's not sticking, and there are three things that are missing, and tell you why it's not sticking. The first of all, it's not seen as a change program. If you were to bring any change, when you're asking people to start looking after their health and their well-being, that requires change. And so it should be positioned as a change program within an organization. The second thing that's missing is that there is no organization accountability to look after the health of people. None whatsoever. We spend billions in health and safety. Guess what? It all goes to safety. Think about what I've said. Billions in health and safety. Well, it all goes to safety. And it goes to safety because there's organizational accountability and responsibility to keep people safe. Because if you fall down the stairs and break your neck, you'll go to jail as the CEO. Yet today, there is an inconvenient truth in organizations today. And you know what the inconvenient truth is? Not environmental pollution. It's called social pollution. It's called social pollution. And Jeffrey Pfeffer is proving it from Stanford University. Social pollution in workplaces. The impact that stress is having on chronic disease in the world today, including mental ill health. And you know what? Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Walk into an organization and I bet you will see bins for recycling. Because we want to get after the inconvenient truth called environmental pollution. Well, there's another inconvenient truth called social pollution, and nobody cares. So there's no organization responsibility. And you know what the third thing is? There's no individual accountability. Nobody's held accountable for looking after their health. You're held accountable for making sure you've got the knowledge and the skills to do the job. You're made accountable for having the right behaviors, the right experience, but nobody's held accountable for looking after their health. And until we think about this as a strategic imperative, a change program with organizational responsibility and individual accountability, well-being will remain a kind of a few bananas next to the till. And so that's my challenge, and that's my provocation to organizations today. And you know why I want them to look after their well-being? I want them to look after the well-being of their people, because when you look after your well-being, you have the most important driver of the performance of any individual. And that is energy. You know what it's like to work for somebody who radiates energy. You know what it's like. You love going to work with them. Versus those people that I call drains, that have this wonderful ability to suck every bit of energy out of you. And when you see them coming down the corridor, you decide, oh, Rob's my mate, I'm going to start chatting to Rob, even though I don't know him, because I just want to avoid that person. And so how do we look after our energy? And the way in which we look after our energy is by looking after our well-being at 4 levels. It's our physical health. It's our emotional health. It's our mental health. And it's whether we've got a sense of purpose or meaning in our lives. And that's not something that I've come up with. That's Warwick Edinburgh's research in terms of what are the drivers of our energy and our well-being. Yet we spend years at school and all we get taught is physical health. We never taught how to look after our emotional health, our feelings. We never taught how to keep our mind healthy so that we have the cognitive ability necessary to do our jobs. And we are never challenged with why we were born. And I've learned a very simple acronym that I want to leave with you today. The acronym that I've learned is called CAN-DO. It's very simple and hopefully really practical, but can be very difficult to actually do in order to look after my well-being and my health. So apart from acceptance, I've learned the power. You know what the C stands for? C stands for connect. I've learned the power of just connecting with my friends, with my family, with my colleagues again. You see, we've all got connected to our phones. That's the only thing we're truly connected to. In fact, it lies next to our bed, and you've got your partner next to you, and the first thing that you do in the morning is you look at your phone. We are so connected to those things, and we have forgotten about the human connection that maintains my emotional health. So that's the C. The A stands for be active. And I'm not saying you have to go and run a marathon or you have to go and ride the Tour de France, but I'm just saying find time during the course of a day to just be active. The N, you'll all love this, I know, because we all feel it. The N, and it really looks after your emotional health. The N is just try and be nice to somebody. Just try and be nice to somebody and see what that does to your emotional health. The D stands for discover, be curious, and learn to maintain your mental health. And the O stands for observe. Do you know one of the things that I've learned is that I used to get on a train of a morning and the first thing that I would do before I've even sat down is I'm on my iPhone. Well, you know what I do now is I wait for 4 stations. 4 stations. So I get on at Horsley and I go Effingham, Cobham, Oxshott, and then I can't wait for Claygate. And as Claygate arrives, I pull out my phone. And you know what do you think I do between Horsley and Claygate? What do you think I do? Beg your pardon? I just observe. I just sit and I look out the window. Somebody said to me the other day, you know, I go into a coffee shop these days. If I go into a coffee shop and somebody is just sitting, having a coffee, I think they're weird. I think they're weird because they're not on a device. They're not on a screen. So learning to just take moments during the course of the day to just observe. Can do. In conclusion, because I want you to throw a few questions at me, and we've got to be done by 6. So in conclusion, if organizations, if you're going to, you know, I mean, I think it was Dan who was saying to me, there's a message also about if you're just an individual in a company, how can you catalyze some change? What could you do to catalyze some change in this particular area, irrespective of who you are? And I was fortunate because I was quite a senior person, and so people kind of sometimes listened to me when I said things. But one of the things that I realized, and what I did, was the following, was we as Unilever had a sense of purpose, and it still does. And the purpose of Unilever, part of its purpose is to improve the health and the well-being of 1 billion people in the world. I became really curious about the well-being of our own people. Because here we are saving the world. What about the well-being of our own people? And so what was really important was for me to get some data around our own people's well-being. What were our levels of absenteeism, presenteeism, etc., etc. And so with that data, I had that data. And when I saw that data, I kind of thought, wow, this is not good. I know we're creating a sense of purpose, but our numbers are going in the wrong direction. And so I spoke to a couple of board members and I said, look, somebody's got to talk to the CEO about this. And none of them wanted to talk to the CEO because he's not a human being, is what they think. And so what I think I'll do is I decide that I'll bring Alistair Campbell to come in and to do a talk. So he comes to Unilever, 100 Victoria Embankment. We say that Alistair Campbell's coming in, and if any of you have not heard his story, you've got to listen to it. It's just an amazing story of what he's been through. And he comes up to the canteen and he starts to tell us, and we invite people, and there are about 20 people there. And I think, jeepers, this is a disaster. There are 20 people there. Well, guess what? After about 15 minutes of him telling his story, the place is full. The place is full. And I remember him saying to me, I'm giving you 1 hour, from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock. At 6:30 that night, he walks out of the building. And when he walks out of the building, you know what he does? Lovely social media. He tweets back then to his 250,000 followers. What an amazing afternoon he's had in Unilever talking about depression and anxiety. Not stress, depression and anxiety. I see this tweet. I think, I'm going to send that tweet to the CEO. He'll love to see that. Look what Unilever's doing to address depression and anxiety in the workplace. And again, I have luck written all over my forehead because that tweet and that talk was about 4 weeks after Davos back in 2013. And Pullman, who's the CEO of Unilever, had just come back from Davos, and the most oversubscribed session at Davos in 2013 was Arianna Huffington session on Thrive. It was the most oversubscribed session. So this tweet goes to Paul Polman. He sees this tweet of what Alistair Campbell thinks of Unilever and the amazing work we're doing to address depression and anxiety. So what do you think Polman does? He sends the tweet to Arianna Huffington. Look what we're doing. Arianna Huffington sends him an email back saying, if you're doing such amazing work in addressing the stigma around depression and anxiety in Unilever, write an article for the Huffington Post. My phone goes. Can you help write this article for the Huffington Post? Well, Paul, we're doing nothing and we've got a problem. Ever since that day, he becomes the biggest sponsor behind the work that Unilever is doing today to address the stigma of mental ill health. So an external catalyst, some data. Sometimes there is a need for a business case. So that's the one thing to just bear in mind. And then finally, if we're going to break the stigma, I think you've got to have 4 things in place to truly break the stigma. We need leaders who are engaged in this and who are prepared to advocate like they do safety. And I've got so much hope. We've done it for safety. Let me give you a statistic. The construction industry in this country, last year, how many deaths, fatalities in the industry as a result of a safety blemish? No, there were some. There were 35. Now, that's still 35 too many, but there were 35. How many suicides? 441. 1.5 a day in this country, in the industry. So we've done it for safety. What about the health of our people? So getting leaders as engaged around enhancing the health, the energy of people so that they can perform at their best. Getting leaders to invest in training everybody. I want everybody in every organization going through some basic training around mental ill health. Just to unpack it. What's depression? What's anxiety? What are the symptoms? How do I have a conversation with somebody? How do I bring somebody back to work? 90 minutes, 2 hours, that's all I'm asking for. I'm not asking for a day or 2 days, but we do it for safety. When you join an organization, one of the first courses you go through is the safety course. So training, leadership engagement, and then finally, who are the creatives in the room? Who are the marketeers? Who are the ad people? Any? Come on, put your hands up, help me. So what I want us to do is I want us to sort out brand mental health. I want us to create a brand that is inspirational and aspirational. So when I think about it, if I walk into a Nike store, if I walk into an Adidas store, if I walk into any other sporting store, I see the most beautiful people, the images of the most beautiful people all over the walls. I call them chiseled whippets. Chiseled whippets. Rob, you should stand up. Hey? Come on, stand up. A chiseled whippet, okay? All right? Next to this fatty. All right? And I look at that image of Rob on the wall and I feel inspired to go and buy a pair of running shoes. What are the images we see around mental health? What are the images? Yeah, Geoff McDonald with his hand in his head, some black and white photograph, some guy in a mental asylum. What is inspirational and aspirational in looking after my mental health? Nothing. There's not one image out there. Like I said, who's the Usain Bolt? When I use the word mental health, people immediately go to illness. They go to depression, anxiety, bipolar. When I use the word physical health, you don't immediately go to glandular fever, diabetes. So how do we really shift that narrative? You know what? I'm in such good company. I'm in such good company. Winston Churchill, Marie Curie, Abraham Lincoln. I'm in such good company. Johnny Wilkinson. So, if we want to break the stigma, leadership engagement and advocacy, using data, using external catalysts, training, educating, because we never got any of it at school, and then shifting that narrative to make it inspirational, aspirational, to maintain my mental health. In conclusion, if this afternoon's session has in any way provoked you, if it's been a bit raw for you and you need to talk to somebody, please go and talk to someone. It saved my life. It saved my life. If it's inspired you in any way, what I would love to see more and more is I want to see those of us that have got a story. And guess what? We've all got a story. You might not have a crucible moment story like mine, but you've got a story. You've got a brother, you've got a sister, you've got an aunt, you've got an uncle, you've got a son, you've got a daughter, you've got a partner. We've all got a story. And you know, the more we tell our stories, it is the most powerful lever in breaking the stigma. Because every single story that we tell is like a lifeboat being sent out into the ocean, where those people who are suffering in silence, they cling onto that lifeboat. And they realize they might just be normal. Thank you.
So, welcome to our sound experience. I am Jane Ellis. I work as a Kundalini yoga teacher at High Times Yoga, and I'm also a sound healer. And I love working with the crystal singing bowls because they are able to drop you into a deep state of relaxation. This is why they're so special. The bowls themselves release sine waves which resonate with our own brain waves alpha state. And in this alpha state, we are not only able to relax very deeply, we're also able to heal, to open our creative and intuitive channels, and our cellular renewal accelerates. So our cells repair themselves much quicker when we're in this relaxed state. So they're really beautiful, and their tones are pure because they are made of pure crystal. They release very pure tones, and when we hear those tones, it really awakens something beautiful inside of us, and we remember our own beauty, our own purity, our own light. So when you listen to these bowls, just lie back, relax, and remember your own truth, your own divine light, your own beauty. So I'm going to teach you a very simple way to de-stress. This is actually going to balance you from the inside out. Okay, so very important is we call it the mudra. This is just the placement of the fingers. So the fingertips are touching and the thumb tips are touching, and you spread the fingers very wide and you spread the thumbs away from the fingertips. And just be comfortable wherever you are. You can be sat down on a chair, you could be standing like me if you really want to. I prefer sitting usually. And just take this moment before we begin to just elongate through the spine as you take a deep cleansing breath. And as you exhale, roll the shoulders back and down. One more time. Really lengthen the spine on the inhalation. Inhaling through the nose, long and deep. And as you exhale, roll the shoulders back and down. Now very, very slowly, just allow the head to fall all the way back. Allow the throat to open. And slowly, slowly bring the head so it sits on top of the sternal notch. And in this position, you should feel a beautiful straight alignment in your spine. And now we're ready to begin. So press a little pressure on those fingers, on those thumbs. And you're just going to take 8 emphatic or definite inhalations through the nose and 8 definite exhalations through the nose. You can close your eyes as you do this. And if you are going to close your eyes, please focus on the space between your eyebrows. Are you ready? You can watch me demonstrate the first one. Let's start together. 8 inhalations through the nose. Deep inhalation. Suspend the breath. Hold the breath for a moment inside of you. Apply the locks. Locking the breath inside, pulling up on the anus, the sex organs. Scoop the navel up. Hold. Exhale.
Hi everyone, my name is Mina. Today we're going to be talking about Qigong. Not many people understand what Qigong is, but Qigong is standing meditation. And you're connecting with your Qi energy and gaining energy from around you and releasing energy. So I'm going to do some very basic foundation Qigong with you today. So to begin, I want you to put your tongue into your upper palate and just hold it there. Your breath is going to be very important with what I'm going to tell you and how to move, as important as the movements that come here. So first, I'll take a deep breath in. And very slowly, you let your breath out. So deep. And slowly out. Raise your left toe and bring it out to your left. Your arms around you and your fingertips almost touching. Focus on your fingertips. Everything else becomes blurred around you. It's like you're hugging a big ball. Relax your shoulders, don't tense them. And breathe. Remain in this position. Focus on your fingers and blur everything out and just go with the breath. very slowly. And really relax those shoulders. Bring your hands down beside your sides. Slightly bend your knees and collect the energy from around you. Very slowly bring it up. As you bring it up, you raise your knees and then bring it down. All along, your breath, as I said, it's important. You breathe in through your daichen here, through your belly button. As you're moving, the breath is going up, around your back and back down through the front. You're creating a circle. So you breathe in. And breathe out. One more time. And from the front, collect the energy up and breathe out. The slower you move, the more pressure you breathe into yourself. Feel your fingers go through the air. Feel the air particles. Collect the energy. And slowly release. Bring the energy to the back. Stretch your arms. Your knees become straightened. Bring it forward. Up. Raise the arms like a bird and bring it down. Now from the front, the chest. All along, your breath is important. Breathing in and breathing out. One more time. Now we can take it way up to this side and breathe out. Really stretch those arms. As you bring your breath out, bring it down. One more time. Now bring your arms up to your armpits. Push out and glare with your eyes. The glaring is going to help your eyesight and the muscles behind your eyes. Bring down. Now we're going to take him out to the side and stretch. to breathe in and breathe out. Bring your hands opposite your palms. Breathe in, up to the sky. And bring it back down. Knees still slightly bent. Go. Breathe up. One more time. This time we bring it across. Create a heart shape. Bring it to your chest. And bring down. Twist. Down. Push yourself up. Go down as much as you can. Turn your hands round. And push. So with the breath. Bring yourself back down. Last one. Always imagine the breath through your belly button. The finishing starts. And the last one. Hands by your sides and feet together.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thank you for joining me back for another episode of Ready, Steady, Sip, the faintly ridiculous little show that I've created. Not at all, obviously, inspired by a certain BBC show, but perhaps the premise gives it away. So I have this apparently mystery bag of ingredients, and with it I'm going to create some cool cocktails for you. If you don't know me, my name is Pritesh Mody. I run an incredible bottled cocktail company called World of Zing. So that is our Bordeaux barrel-aged Negroni. Go onto the World of Zing website if you want some cocktail goodness in your life right now without messing around. I'm also a regular food and drink presenter on Channel 4 Sunday Brunch. So you may have seen me on that show. The premise for today is, if you're already tuned in as part of it, I have collaborated with an incredible wellness festival called Getahead. These guys sell out every year at all of their festivals, and obviously given the circumstances, the live festival hasn't happened, so you may be watching this as part of the festival on various online TV channels. And if you haven't, and if you're watching this after the 17th of April, then just check out Getahead. It's all about wellness. I think yoga, mental well-being. I think all this stuff is so important at this time. And you know, they asked me to come up with some cocktails, I guess, inspired by their philosophies. And you know, to be clear, you know, alcohol and wellness, there's no real link to it. You know, alcohol is a drug of sorts. So I just want to just make it really, really clear that, you know, there is really no safe level of alcohol. However, like so many things in life, like chocolate and driving fast and all these kind of things, you know, there are still elements that we can enjoy in moderation. So, you know, I've looked at how we can have some really interesting, fun cocktails that also kind of look at, I guess, the more nourishing side of ingredients, fresher ingredients, vegetables, etc. And I guess when you start going down that direction, you start looking at Bloody Marys. And I guess let's just get going with it. To prove the point, the first drink that I am creating for you guys, I don't really have a great name for this one, so if anyone wants to give me a great name for it, then please do, but for purposes of today, we're just calling it the Carrot and Pineapple Mary. So we have our pineapple, carrot juice even, pineapple juice, and all we're going to do with this one is super, super simple, is I am going to get some ice into a shaker. So I have, fortunately, lots of ice here behind me. So I can get some ice into there. Let's also get some ice into a glass. Some nice cubes in there. And we're going to start off with some vodka. So go with some good quality stuff. We're drinking at home at the moment. Let's go for quality over quantity. So I've got some Kettle One vodka here. So I do a lot of work with these guys around Bloody Mary programs. And it's just a really good, well-bodied vodka. So you've got 50 mils of vodka in there. We've got 70 mils of carrot juice. Then we're going to go with about 30 mils of pineapple juice. So look, you know, if you've got carrots at home and you've got a juicer, make your own carrot juice. It's really easy. Otherwise, you know, on your next shop, stuff like this is really, really readily available. Lasts forever in the fridge. And given that we're going to be spending quite a bit of time at home, there's no reason why you shouldn't have some there. Great for breakfast. Then a bit of lemon juice. So I'm sure everyone knows what a lemon looks like. That's a lemon. I have pre-juiced mine. So we want 10 mils of lemon juice. So when we think about Bloody Marys, why is this drink connected to a Bloody Mary? So Bloody Marys generally we look at as, you know, vegetable focused, on the savoury side. I say this word, nourishing, so kind of, you know, enriching ingredients, loads of vitamins and minerals, etc., etc. You know, and with these drinks I'm creating, by the way, is if you're not drinking, just drop the alcohol out, and the drinks will still work. They're still really, really well balanced. So, you know, when we've got the carrot juice in there, you've got that kind of earthy, savoury vegetal ingredient. Pineapple just adds a bit of acidity and a bit of sweetness. And then you've got lemon juice. I'm going to put a bit of ginger in here. So this is just like ginger paste. I don't have any fresh ginger, and I'm not going to go out to get some fresh ginger, but this ginger paste stuff works really, really well. So that was like half a teaspoon, if that. Just do it to your own taste. And then we need some salt and pepper. So again, kind of Bloody Marys always have that salinity into them. So just sort of a pinch of salt. I like flake salts. Flake salt just softens, disintegrates a lot quicker, and if you do get some on your palate, you get this lovely even spread of flavour. So I've just put a little grinding of salt and pepper, and then hot sauce. So you've got a couple of options on this one. At World of Zing, I designed a range of hot sauces, essentially to pair with Bloody Marys, actually. So we've got our pineapple and habanero hot sauce here, which obviously works really, really well directly with the pineapple in the cocktail itself. However, if you can't find that, then Dawson chilies, again, a Scotch bonnet heavy hot sauce. So anything Scotch bonnet habanero naturally has a sort of tropical flavour to it. So give that a go. And all I'm going to do is, let's go with the World of Zing one, pour some of that in here. So again, I'm just going to go with half a teaspoon, but look, chili and stuff like that is really personal. So make some, taste it, add some more if you need some. But better to start with less than more. And then let's shake this. You know it's done when the outside of the shaker or your shaking vessel is chilled. And I'm not going to bother straining this out. Look at that, beautiful. And then just garnish that. You want something quite fresh. I did have some, oh yes, some coriander. If coriander's not your thing, a bit of parsley, maybe even a bit of mint, something quite fresh. So there you go. So that's our carrot and pineapple Mary. I mean, that's really beautiful. Really light, really refreshing. And the shaking, you know, you get that lovely froth on top, lovely silky texture. So I'll leave that one to the side. Next one, we will go with a more traditional style of Bloody Mary. This is what we call a Bloody Maria, which is really cool. So Bloody Marias are made with tequila. So given that influence, we are going to use a really beautiful tequila, Don Julio Blanco. So if you've seen my videos before, you want 100% blue agave, nothing else, because you know everything else essentially will, I mean, it's just full of additives and stuff like that, whereas 100% blue agave is just pure spirit. So make sure you stay with that kind of liquid. In terms of the recipe, so what we're going to do, let's get some ice again. Where's my ice? There we go. Put some ice into the shaker. Then we go with 50 mils of Don Julio Blanco. And some lovely tomato juice. So this stuff from Turner and Hardy, made on the Isle of Wight. Just a really natural, lovely flavour. But again, if you can make your own tomato juice at home, you know, again, tomatoes, if you've got stuff like that lying around and you need to use it up, it's a great way. I prefer using unspiced tomato juice because I can control the flavour better as well. I know there's loads of kind of spiced tomato juices out there, but I say, for me, it's always about using unspiced. So add 100 ml into this. There we go. And then for the hot element, I'm going to use some of the World of Zing Naga Peri Peri hot sauce. So reason again I'm using this, really bright, citrusy, you've got a bit of garlic in there, gentle, long heat, but it's that fresh citrusy component. And if you haven't got something like that, then even something like that, which I'm guessing is more readily available, will work really, really well. But again, just add chili to your preference. So again, sort of I'm going about half a teaspoon on that one. And then from a seasoning point of view, this gets quite fun. So everyone, I'm guessing at the moment, or a lot of people out there will have like generic fajita spice mixes at home. So I'm just going to chuck in a pinch of, I mean, like, I don't know if you can see that, but just a pinch of that. From a salt perspective, let's get, you want like a smoked salt, works really, really well. So again, kind of we designed these smoked chili salts to work in Bloody Marys, and you've probably seen them about at bars around London. But you've got just some really lovely smoky chilies with a base of salt flakes in there. And then finally we have in there, we've got a bit of, I'm just going to drop a bit of jalapeno water, just freshens the whole thing up. And a bit of citrus. So in terms of citrus, we need a bit of lime juice. Again, here's some I squeezed earlier. $15 ml of that. And some soy sauce. There we go. So soy sauce just boosting that savoury component, so about 10 ml of soy sauce in there. So that replaces, so you know, when we think about normal Bloody Marys, we're normally looking at Tabasco, Worcester sauce, stuff like that, and they're quite harsh, aggressive ingredients. Which is why, you know, they often lack balance. So with drinks like this, hopefully what you'll find is that they're far better balanced and makes them a lot more enjoyable. There we go. And then what I'm going to do with this, if you've got some, again, just to brighten it up a little bit, is this kombucha. So real kombucha, smoky kind of vibe. So I just want to add a bit of fizz into the drink. If you've got some soda at home or sparkling water, that will do the trick as well. But I found this stuff to be pretty good. Kind of adding a little fizz. And that sparkle just brightens up and freshens up the Bloody Mary. Mate, that's amazing. Now, if you want to, again, garnish that, just go with a lemon wedge or some sort of citrus, whatever you want. And that is it from me. So thank you very much, guys, for joining me on this short but delicious cocktail journey. Hopefully you've enjoyed the drinks. Hopefully you enjoyed all the sessions with Getahead. Try them out. Let me know what you think. # Ready Steady Sip. Check out worldofzing.com for all of our cocktails. And hopefully see you soon. Thank you.